All right. All right. Well, good day, everyone, and welcome to the GSA Acquisition Policy Federal Advisory Committee, better known as FAC, Industry Partnership Subcommittee meeting. I am Stephanie Hardison, the Deputy Designated Federal Officer. Today's event is being recorded and will be posted to our website with all relevant meeting materials. There will be a time for public comments earlier on in this segment for any discussions or topics that members of the public would like to bring up. We will now open the meeting with a subcommittee roll call, by taking roll call. All right. Farad Ali.
Present.
Denise Bailey. Gail Bassett. Susan Lorenz Fisher. Mamie Mallory.
Here.
Daryl McKissick.
Here.
Kristen Seaver.
Here.
Stacy Smedley. Nigel Stevens. Keith Tillage. Dr. David Wagger.
Present.
And Dr. Kimberly Wisewhite.
Present.
Thank you. At this time, roll call has been taken. I'll now turn it over to our chairpersons.
Great. Thanks, Stephanie. We can quickly go through the agenda. I don't know, can somebody share that for me just because I have two other files open? That would be great. So welcome, everybody. We're small and mighty today, but getting re-engaged after a well-deserved respite from our work. So we got a couple of things to go over today. So Farad and I will open. We are going to have public participation somewhat earlier in the agenda. We may wait just a little bit longer than that, but we'll go over kind of where we are. There's been a regrouping of some of our work schedule. So Farad and I will cover that. And then we do have towards the back half, we will have Katie Newhouse and Betty Cremens from the Council on Environmental Quality out of the White House. They'll speak to us a little bit about some of our recommendations, some of their experiences around what we're trying to do, and they have some recommendations of folks we can talk to. So that's kind of an open discussion. So as they get going, feel free, we'll have questions and answers on that. Farad and I had a pre-call with them, and it was extremely beneficial. Unfortunately, I was walking through the airport at the time, and I was like trying to take notes and go through security, and so I'm super happy that they can come back and talk to us a little bit. So before we get into the working document, let me just turn it over to Farad for a few comments.
No, I have no comments. I think you covered the issues well, and we had a great conversation. We want to kind of continue to move the group forward. So thank you all for being here. And Kristen, let's start our engines.
Okay, so let me see if I can share this. You cannot share the screen while other participants are sharing. Okay. All right, let me share my screen and give me 1 second, guys. You know, between Zoom and Teams, I'm trying to figure out the difference. Okay. Can you see this document?
Not yet.
Okay, I failed miserably. All right, what am I doing wrong here? Sorry about that. Give me 1 second. Share screen. Oh, desktop too. Okay, here we go. Yeah. Okay. Okay. You should see a document. It says Industry Partnership.
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Okay. So you all, I put the link to this document in the chat. So this is just a working Word document that we've been using. And there's a couple of key things in here that I want to kind of go over. The first is, in case everybody's not aware, we've decided as a full committee to change the cadence of public meetings for the subcommittee. Every other week was a little intense. We had a lot of startup work to do. So moving forward, and I'm not sure I have the dates correct, but we'll get these all corrected and you'll have a calendar we can work off of. We're going to have our public subcommittee meetings every 4th week. Do I have that right, Stephanie? Every fourth week. And so
every fourth week, yes.
okay, so we're meeting today on the 2nd. And then, so I believe we would then have our next one on the 23rd. Do I have that correct?
It will be on the 30th.
I don't have it correct. On the 30th. Yes, I do. Okay. So so we'll go every fourth week. I would like to schedule an admin meeting after the week after each public meeting. Those will only be an hour for those that can attend, so we can get a little bit organized. Every third or fourth week, there'll also be a chairs meeting. So that's a meeting that Farad and I would attend along with Luke and Steve Schooner and Ann and Nicole with Troy and Cassius. And what we do there is we kind of share what's going on across the subcommittee so that we can have, make sure we're kind of aligned. The other key date on the calendar is November 16th. The week of November 16th is when we're planning, sorry, why is this here? When we're planning to have the next full committee meeting. So that's an output week for us where we are, I believe our expectation is that we will take the feedback from GSA, refine our recommendations, and be able to submit to the full committee our next set of recommendations. Is that correct, Stephanie? Do I have that kind of correct?
Yeah, you have it correct.
Okay. So what I want to do today is focus on, okay, are we clear on what we need to do over these next couple of weeks? So we'll spend some time talking about that. My deliverable to all of you is I'm going to get this updated and make sure I have all the dates correct. And then I'll just send you this calendar via email so you all have it as a PDF and you can just take it. I know we have the calendar invites, but I don't know about you. I get confused with the calendar invites between the work and the other calendar. So I like to have something like this kind of in front of me so I can see what we've got coming up.
Question, Kristen.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
For that November the 16th meeting where we will provide any revised recommendations, do we anticipate we'll do that through an updated report or just slides that'll go there? I'm just trying to figure out, like, make sure that we build in some time, like the week or two before that, to be able to have talked about it.
No, that's a great question.
So let me answer that. So we have not thoroughly thought that out right now.
Okay.
Because there may not be any recommendations at that time. You still may be trying to work that during that time, and it may be just a status update. We're not sure yet. So, but we'll definitely make sure way before November to have that solidified.
Okay.
As part of it.
Thank you.
No, good question. So the next thing I just wanted to make sure, because I know I struggle with this Google Drive. So I want to make sure, has everyone had an opportunity to review the feedback from GSA? We had the session, the full admin meeting, but not everyone was able to attend that. And so if you haven't, I guess, has everybody had a chance to review the feedback? Can we just do a show of hands? Like, okay. If you haven't, or you want to re-review them, right in this document, these are the two documents that have all the GSA feedback. For Boris also sent these out a couple of weeks ago, but I'm including the link here too. So it's the copy of the consolidated feedback from GSA, which is, and actually I'm almost afraid to open it. And then there's a PowerPoint, but the consolidated feedback, let me see if this works. Okay, is an actual spreadsheet, and it's actually who gave the feedback, and you'll see like Katie Newhouse had some feedback and what, how it applied to our recommendations. And then this PowerPoint is more of a high level overview summary points that Boris, I think, put together. So what I would say is if we can all have a chance to review those again, particularly as we go forward with our work. We don't want to create, we don't want to do something that we haven't taken into account some of this feedback, because some of it is specific to our work. And we can spend some time going through that today if folks want. I think we will have a little bit of time. Okay, so moving forward, I don't know if I can make this any bigger. Is that screen big enough for you guys to see? I don't know how to make it bigger. We basically, this is where we kind of are. We have our innovative new entrants recommendation, where that recommendation, if you recall, was pretty specific about how can we make recommendations to target new and innovative entrants that can help in the climate risk sustainability realm in the federal marketplace. And we got quite a bit of specific feedback on that. So our go forward kind of plan is to identify a couple of mechanisms that already exist, such as challenge.gov, that could be leveraged, and then potentially develop some categories and types of challenges that we would be recommending to build this pipeline. We might want to speak to some small innovative companies as part of our research here to hear from them about what their barriers are. And then the output that we discussed with Troy and Cassius would be maybe a pipeline of a few to several types of challenges or prize competitions that GSA could sponsor going forward. So a pipeline, i.e. could be around what type of challenge, what type of market are you going after, that type of thing. So that's kind of where we are with this recommendation. They liked it. They asked us to refine and give them some direction. I'm going to come back to each of these. On the climate and acquisition maturity model, there was a lot of comments about there might be something else going on with this across government. So asking us to kind of do a little bit more research on that. And some feedback on how would GSA actually sponsor this? Should they be sponsoring this? Should somebody else be sponsoring this? So we've gotten some suggestions to reach out to some other organizations, and we still want to do some due diligence around who's done this before and what can we gather. The output that I see us trying to formulate here would be a little bit more refined, how this would actually work, and potentially a very light straw man of what might be some of the key benchmarks of maturity and capability, something to give better sense. Then the third recommendation, which we did not officially submit, but there's a lot of interest in, is around this lighthouse, creating the network of networks. And so the question I would have for our group is, as we talk about this today, is, do we have enough bandwidth to start to tackle this, or should we stay focused on refining these first two recommendations? If you may remember, these three were all very close in kind of prioritization from our group. So let me stop there. Let's pause and let me see what kind of questions or discussion we want to have just around this. Does this make sense compared to what you heard from GSA with the feedback?
Kristen, I think David had a comment.
Oh yeah, please. I can't see the hand. So if somebody else sees those, please, yeah, jump in. I don't know why I can't see him. Go ahead, David.
No, so my comment, it's more of a general one. There's a FAR proposed rule that's about to hit, and I'm just wondering if that affects anything that we are considering here. I think it's supposed to hit the Federal Register tomorrow. It's on the restructuring of Part 23. And it was kind of something, for offline, but
no, yeah, I think it came out yesterday.
Yeah, in a form where it doesn't have any, say, specific dates about when comments are due, but it is a pre-publication version, but it's supposed to come out tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest with you. I did a little bit of research on it, and apparently there's like 2 or 3 different FAR rules out there, kind of in different stages. So it might be good for us to just get clear on those 3.
And that might be an offline thing. I don't know that we can figure it out here. It's a fairly long thing, and I'm not an expert in it, but just wanted to raise that as whether we need to sort of build that into whatever we suggest.
Now, is this a proposed? This is proposed, so I guess would we
Correct.
be under the same guidance, I wonder, as we were with the other one, which was to not really engage, because GSA is on the ruling body, I think. Is it?
Yeah.
Stephanie,
I didn't want
does
to
that sound
get
familiar?
sidetracked, so.
Yes, and I also wanted to mention that Professor Schooner may also be able to provide a high-level discussion on the proposed rule that you're speaking about, offline, of course. Kristen, if you would like, we could ask him.
All right. Yeah, I can reach out to Steve. Okay. Okay, no, good point. Now, I'd like to just have some discussion about how the subcommittee feels about conquering this. So for now, let's just focus on the first two because these are kind of active. We divided into two groups to work on these, if you remember, for the recommendations, but it was, it was a big push. We were all kind of working diligently towards that. So we don't have that much time. If we're only going to meet 4 times, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we have 5 official sessions with some working admin sessions in between to kind of do our due diligence here. So I'd like to hear from the group about what you think about, should we work these collectively? Do you think would be more productive if we split into groups? And granted, not everybody is here, so we'll have to do kind of a email survey as well, in order to advance these 2 causes. How about Kimberly, any thoughts here? Because I know you were kind of involved in the split before.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily opposed to the split if we want to have like a small group try to work through some things. I know our schedules are all tight, but if we could try to do it maybe through email or something, I guess, Stephanie, is that possible? Like, is it okay? Like, we wouldn't have to pull the group together to have a call. We could just do that through email.
No, yes, you're not making any decisions or anything like that. It'll be totally okay.
Okay.
And then we copy you and Boris, is that correct?
Yes, you can. Absolutely.
Maybe I'm asking, are we required to do it?
No, you're not required on everything, not on every message.
Okay.
If you want to be safe, you can. If you're not sure, absolutely. But small things, can we meet today at 12? We don't need that. We don't need that. Yeah.
And if we were to break into 2, we could get organized between this week and next week, and then we could, at the public meeting on the 30th, we could have each of the groups kind of report out where they are and have the full subcommittee kind of weigh in. Maybe we could commit that we would send an update out right prior to the meeting so people could review it, and then we could comment and kind of help collectively move it forward. Additionally, there might be some speaker, if there's and then we can work on the speakers, because I would want everyone to hear speakers for each, because I think there's value there. So if we slot the speakers into the public meetings and help the whole committee. Okay. Farad, any thoughts from your perspective? Did I lose Farad? I think we lost him. Did we lose him?
Picture is there and he's on mute. But I just wanted to add, Kristen, that you could also have public speakers during your admin meetings too, for discovery purposes. Right. You may get those small businesses in there that might not want to be public. And so you could also invite them to your admin meeting. Yeah,
great point. And, because what I've seen is the ones people I've talked to, so for example, like I have a recommendation for a speaker, and it really is around this whole emerging company, but then he also has this experience, like I was talking to him about the maturity model and some things that might help there. So a lot of these folks can help cross-pollinate multiple recommendations, even though we have them kind of focused on one. So we can definitely work to slot those in there. let me, how about Mamie, any comments? I want to really hear from the group today. I do a lot of talking, so.
In terms of small groups or the committee as a whole?
Yeah, yeah, or how are you feeling about things going forward?
I'm okay. I don't, either way, I'm okay with it. I guess the small group may make more, probably would move faster.
Okay.
But but let me say, my concern is the you know, we plug and play when we have the opportunity to. I think that's the challenge as well. So that's going to be there.
You mean as far as reconnecting back or just scheduling conflicts?
Yeah, just scheduling conflicts, or you know, the committee as a whole is not as big as it used to be. And therefore we're talking about subgroups, and just realize it's a challenge to for the commitment side. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Any other feedback? Is there any, and I know not everyone's here, so Farad and I are going to have to circle back with folks, but I believe we kind of had, Farad was kind of leading innovative new entrants, and I was kind of taking the lead on the climate and acquisition model. So I'm comfortable with going forward with that. He and I will have to stay connected to both, right? So we can thread them all together. Any feelings of which group you guys would like to be on? Let's go.
I have a question. Where was the maturity model? That was in a different recommendation?
No, that was our recommendation number 2. Our recommendation number 1, which I think was recommendation number 4, not to confuse the topic, was the expand the supplier base with innovative new entrants. And our second recommendation was for GSA to sponsor a maturity model focused on the industry facing climate and sustainability and acquisitions. Okay,
I didn't hear the maturity model, but it wasn't 3 recommendations.
We put forward 2.
Somebody else put 3. Okay.
Yes, actually, let me call up this other file, and that might be good to go through. Give me 1 second. Let's see if we can do this. And yeah, so this is one of the documents that's in the link in the document I just sent everybody. And so this is a good document because it has all the recommendations we submitted. So here they are here. So AWS implemented recommended 3, the change acceleration, the sustainability as a core value, and creating acquisition sustainability experts. And then our 2 recommendations was identify, engage, and onboard innovative new entrants, and then sponsor a maturity model for embedding sustainability and climate risk mitigation into federal acquisitions. I think it's really important for us to keep that there because people are having a hard time figuring out what we exactly mean there. And then policy and practice had the reduced single-use plastics. Might as well go through this, I think. We'll just go through ours. And so this was the summarized GSA feedback. And so for our 2 recommendations, the first one, they supported the idea. They asked us to look at existing programs. In our recommendation, we had cited challenge.gov. They also recommended these 2 programs, which we don't know, none of us knew anything about. So we probably, this small subgroup, I think one of the first things will be to, learn about challenge.gov, Fastlane, and Apex. What are these mechanisms? Would they be useful to engage new entrants? And then could develop and deploy targeted initiatives. So this is where, can we kind of create a pipeline for GSA to consider for challenges? And then this third point, which we did some of that when we had the Small Business Association talk to us, but I think that might be some of what we look at too. And which we go forward. And then on the maturity model, the feedback we got. Now, this is the high level feedback. The Excel spreadsheet has the detailed feedback. I think, some of the feedback around this was, it was a pretty broad recommendation. So I think GSA is looking for a little refinement on it, and a little bit of explanation. And then is there, one concern I think, Stephanie, I heard was, concern over redundancy of effort going on across the government. And we should do some due diligence around that. And how would GSA potentially go forward with this? And I think on the full committee meeting, we got some feedback to potentially reach out to ACT and some other folks. And I have that on another list. So that's the feedback we got from GSA. Okay. Well, we might as well start to get organized. So I'd love to be able to get people going on groups. So can you tell me which group you want to be on? Farad, you're going to lead the first one, yeah?
Yes, exactly. I was about to say, make sure, if you don't mind. That'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah, we lost you there for a second. Did you have any comments in general?
No, I don't. I think this is, it's important, as you said, we get more specific to it, kind of look through what we're doing to help GSA get focused to use this information. So yeah, I'd like to be on the first group, please.
Yep. I'm gonna have you lead that. I'll lead the second group. Let me go. David, do you want to stay with me on maturity model?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay. All right. And then I think, let me see, Daryl, I'm thinking you're going to want to be on the first group, but I don't want to assume.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Daryl.
Thank you.
But I will say I'm going on vacation for 3 weeks and I will be unavailable.
That's good. Where are you going?
I'm going to Martha's Vineyard, but I just haven't had any time off. So I'm not even doing work. So I know I'm not doing volunteer work.
Okay.
I know what Martha's Vineyard is like in August. It's a wonderful time.
It's a lot going on.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we all live. We all have lives. This is why we'll do the best we can, right? Let me, Kimberly, how about you? You were with us, but do you have a preference?
Yeah, I think I was with you guys on the climate and acquisition and maturity model, but I'm also interested in the new entrant stuff. So I'd like to be on that one too.
2 is in both, or you want to switch over to the other one?
2 is in both.
I love it. Awesome. Okay. And then
I would like to volunteer Nigel into the first group.
Yeah. Okay. And Mamie.
First.
Okay. And then I will reach out to, I think we should volunteer the rest of the group, right? We'll just kind of divide and conquer there. Does anybody have any issues with that?
The first, I may have practical experience.
Definitely. All right. Okay, so Farad, what we'll do then, if it makes sense for everybody, you and I will go through the list of remaining committees and make a recommendation for which group. I think that'll save us a lot of time than asking. And then if somebody has real agita, they can let us know and we can switch them.
Yeah, and we can also, what I was thinking, Stephanie, if it's okay with you, how about if we can do a doodle poll where we can ask people what group they want to be in? That way we can avoid us being, want to make sure it's a democratic process. That if we can say, look, pick a group, in that way, they can do that. I mean, is that something that you all could do?
You didn't do that for Nigel. You just.
Yeah, Nigel, we can
put his. Wait a minute. Yeah.
We can check his box already.
All right.
But if you don't mind doing that, could be helpful, because that way, it's not like Kristen and I just doing it and they not get, people not be happy. But it's a thought. I don't know what you think.
No, I'm totally open to it. I just, I think we're looking for speed, right? We got a lot to.
No, I'm saying by Monday. I'm not saying long. I'm saying send this out. This is the results of our meeting. We need to have this done by Friday at 5. Otherwise, you'll be self-appointed. You'll be appointed. I mean, I just think that'd be good. And then you and I can talk on Monday, Kristen, but I think it'd be great if we give people an option and then go forward.
We can put a poll together. That's not an issue. You all just let us know when you like us to send that out, and we'll try to get that together to send it out.
Yeah, tomorrow morning. Tell them Friday by 5. Because you can say this is the results of the meeting, right? As a go forth strategy, we want to make sure we get people in their right lanes. And then Kristen, you and I can get together on Monday and then assort what we get back from Stephanie by 5 or Monday morning, and then navigate through the rest of the list.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. Sounds good. Okay. Excellent. Let me see. How are we doing on time? 3:36. We may finish early. So while we're going at this, so given that, I'd like to kind of poll, I'm going to go to the speakers list, and I want to talk about who else do we want to hear from to help out with gaining information on these recommendations. So, and I have a couple I want to run by the group. So.
And Kristen, if this is a document that you've already prepared, could you please put the link in the chat, and I'll make sure that Mamie gets a copy.
Mm-hmm. I just got to find it. Yeah, it's just our ongoing speaker list, so I'll put that in the chat now. This is the one we keep on the folder. I can't find the chat now, Stephanie. Telling you. Yeah. Okay, there it is. All right. So this is just our speaker list. It's been on the drive since day 1. And trying to just keep a running total of who we've had. So I wanted to share this with the group. I had a pretty interesting conversation with John Braze here. He's a managing partner for a venture capital firm that focuses on tech companies, that tech for good kind of philosophy. So he was a connection from the past, but I was sharing with him what the Gap Act was doing. And he had a lot of insights, I think, around why emerging tech doesn't engage or look to engage with the government. And some of it is because of the company, but some of it is actually because of some of the guidance they get from the people investing in the companies, because of the sales cycle time, the ability to get on contract. We've heard that from small business too. So I think for that first recommendation, he would be a really good person to come in and talk to the group. And additionally, I spoke with a small emerging company that is making textile out of proteins, keratin proteins. So it's a circular economy type product because of the carbon impact of the textile industry. And this gentleman's, I have to get all his information. I'll put it in the speaker list. He's got a really interesting story. He actually comes from multi-generation textile family business. And so to convert into a new technology is pretty interesting, you know, how he got to where he was and now what he's trying to do. And he's starting to do a little bit of work with the government. And so he has some perspective on what's been easy, what's been hard, that type of thing. So I'll put those two names in this document. And if that's somebody would like to have come speak to at one of our meetings, I can help coordinate that. So Farad, I'll let you talk to your group and let me know if there's interest there. I'll put their names in here.
Okay.
The other contacts that we heard from, one was to reach out to ACT-IAC. Apparently ACT-IAC co-sponsored the FATARA maturity, the FATARA model for IT modernization a while back. So that was recommended by one of our other committee members. I think it was Richard at the last full meeting. So we can reach out to them. Troy just wrote back to us today. We are trying to reach out to NIST to gain an understanding of their experience with the cyber risk framework. This one would be more geared towards recommendation number 2. So we have a couple of speakers kind of in the works. Let me just see, what about from the group? Do you have any ideas on folks we might want to talk to for either of the recommendations? Small business, might be a small business. They can come into, as Stephanie said, an admin meeting and talk about what have been some of the hurdles, what are some of the challenges, maybe someone who's been successful getting on contract, you know, how did they do it? How did they overcome those challenges? These would be the types of folks we'd like to speak with.
So they have to be outside of the group, because I mean, I qualify to speak on some of that.
Yeah, no, I don't think they have to be outside the group at all.
Nope.
And you're saying they need to be on contract? Can we get people who are interested in getting in the contract?
No, I didn't say they had to be anything. I said you could get either. I said, you know, we could talk to folks who are trying. We could talk to people who are successful. I mean, this is an open docket for, you know, but I guess you know, it would be good to get some folks talking to us. So Daryl, like from your perspective, that would be great if you wanted to put together a couple of things about what the challenges are. I know you've spoke to some of those already in some of our meetings, but it's helpful.
Okay.
Do you want entrance going into sustainability type contracting? What is it, or is this into GSA schedule?
Well, I think, you know, to help refine the recommendations, it could be climate and sustainability, but I would say, you know, if there's small emerging business that's willing to talk to us, we should listen. I think it will help with I think it will help with that recommendation, even though it's narrow, but expanding the supplier pool is also one of our goals. So I think hearing from them would help. So I guess the answer is I wouldn't limit it, maybe, I guess is what I'm thinking.
But how do we connect with those branching into sustainability, climate, all of that, products and services around that?
Yeah, so that's the one. I don't have him listed here. Bloom Labs is, I'll put his information with a link so people can look at it. He would be like a climate and sustainability entrance. I think Nigel has some ideas on that. So Farad, maybe as part of your working group, we can ask Nigel to populate the list here. I think he do some companies. And we could do some research on where are some of these companies. We could, as a subcommittee, we can do some research around that.
Okay, I have a textile company. I just don't know the size of them, but I was at a Neocon and they were dealing with textiles, but I think they're being used on a lot of systems furniture type or demountable walls and things. They're fabric and stuff. I'm not sure, but that and it's woman owned, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I think it'd be good. You know, I think hearing those perspectives is just really important.
Okay.
You know, I was thinking if we can do in a public meeting setting or in a a diverse group, Daryl, I'm very conscious to ensuring that we have diversity. If we can do a panel with, a minority-owned businesses, a minority, African-American, Hispanic, and Asian, and kind of hear how they're doing in the government or how they wanted in the government, to give us some context, right? And they may be in this space, but I believe we can reach out to the groups that we have as partners, and then allow them to, 5 minutes each, right? It would be really important to hear those perspectives and have them on the record. I'm just thinking about that. And we could talk around if they're in the climate control space, or what they may see as barriers, like a real discussion point, each one getting five or so minutes with pointed questions so that we can hear their outcome and their output, and then they can all be addressing them so we can have a common size, we would have common size the answers. It'd be harder to, they're not in the same room, so I don't know if we want to do it like a panel, but it would be good to get 1, 2, 3, and then there could be recommendations from people that we need to be partnering with, like the U.S. Black Chamber, the U.S. Asian Chamber, U.S. Hispanic Chamber, from the standpoint of getting them engaged and getting their people educated so we can start talking to them around this as a resource.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. It's just, reaching out, coordinating, getting folks. I think that's the work that has to be done to make that happen. But I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I'd be happy to speak on the panel, but also when you start talking about organizations, I started a whole organization called AEC Unites, which is launching on October the 3rd. But we have, it's really to build capacity of Black businesses in our industry, and also to bring Black talent in our industry. But my executive director, she came from the ABC, and she can definitely talk about barriers that exist for minority companies. So if you want to talk to her, she might be helpful.
Yeah, that would be great.
As well. I mean, I'm going to tell you from a person who was
right.
who went through being 8A, small business, and trying to do work with the federal government right now. what the difficulties are. Yeah.
Yeah. And Daryl, since you're going away, I mean, if that's something you just want to kind of put into bullet points, and then we can loop back with you when you get back. But if you want to share that with the group that way, that's another way we can share.
Okay.
And then if you want to connect your executive, you want to speak to your executive director and then maybe connect her with Farad, and so we can coordinate.
That would be great.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be happy to take this on right now. I mean, I think there's an understanding that there's all of these diverse projects are under scrutiny because of the recent Supreme Court ruling. And so we want to show the value, right? The economic value. I don't want to play the game of affirmative action, but really be focused on why, for us to be a competitive country, that we're going to have to take in our diverse marketplaces and to advance them and educate them on how to remain competitive, right? And how they are, and if we create more barriers for them, how that's not good economic sense for our country. We need to make sure we have inclusion and highlight that.
And you mentioned Asian though, and a lot of this spun out of the fact that Asians were against minorities like Blacks and Latinos getting their fair share. And so that is a whole nother can of worms. I don't know if you want to even include that or not. I mean, I know you're talking about inclusion of all people, but a lot of times Asians do not fit in that same category. They get a different pass than Black folks and Latinos. So
and Daryl, I'm not interrupting, but I think we should also that would also allow us to include Native Americans too, right? Because they have
I can see Native Americans. I can see Native Americans.
Yeah, and
you have the big ANC, which is a whole nother ballgame. From big, they can be big and they can be small.
Yeah.
But the Sixth Circuit or something has there's been a ruling on the 8A some decision that's coming.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be appealed.
Yep. So we'll work on that. And I hear the voices, so that's something I will work on, and with the committee to come up with an answer for that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And keep in mind that some of this gathering of information can help with this specific recommendation around innovative new entrants, but all of it can help with our goal of expanding and diversifying the supplier pool. So if I'm kind of making sense. So as we collect this information and use it, you know, I think some of it can be used for this innovative new entrant element, but all of it can be used for us as we put forth other recommendations on how to expand and better diversify the supplier pool. Okay, I just don't want us to lose sight kind of our objectives with these two recommendations, with a goal of kind of getting them to a point where we can provide them to GSA and then move down our list, right? If you remember, we had 7 or 8 recommendations that we really want to get into. So I think the better job we do, like kind of keeping these, getting these polished up, refined and resubmitted, it's going to open up our bandwidth to then go back to our full list and really go after those 2 goals and priorities we had, if I'm making sense there. So Farad, you tracking with me?
I mean, I get it. I just want to make sure, you know, I'm thinking about our work and its usability for the whole, what we're doing.
Yep.
And how this all works. So yeah, I think all these comments are important. So yeah, we'll talk through it in our innovation group and come up with something.
Yep, awesome. Okay, that's good. All right, what else? This is good. We're doing good here with some ideas. And then Mamie, if you want to think about your contact, if you want to provide me with that information, I'll populate the sheet.
Okay.
Okay, and then we can figure out. So again, and what we'd be looking at is, you know, can we slot any of these folks? Probably next week is too soon, but you know, can we slot them for August 30th or September 5th? September, oh, I have that wrong. That would be admin. See, I got to clean up this calendar. We probably wouldn't have, I think that's Labor Day week, so we probably wouldn't do one that week, but I'll get this all cleaned up. So the other thing you can do is if we're talking to folks, take notes, like if they're not available to make a meeting, but they want to offer some insights and their perspectives, you know, you can take notes on that and just ask them if they're open to you sharing that with the committee, and we can gather information that way too. I think particularly on the maturity model, we may have to divide and conquer and do some of that. Okay, any other thoughts on speakers? Anything we don't know when you think about these 2 recommendations? Is there what don't we know that we need to find out? I think is another way to kind of look at this. So I'd ask you to be thinking about that. So for example, somebody asked the questions, how are we going to find these emerging tech companies that are dealing, it might not be tech, that are dealing with climate and sustainability. So we might have to do some research on that. Who can help us find information about that? Where do we go look? On the maturity model, you know, one of the feedback from GSA was, are there commercial models available? So I think we'll have to do a little bit of work on that and figure out how we can find that out.
So, Kristen, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I keep thinking, and maybe others have had the same thought, that how do you find them? Well, isn't that the lighthouse? So it seems like there's some connection to them. So they're not exactly the same, but I think they're related. It's somewhat.
Yes. I wholeheartedly agree. And so it's like, do we have the cart before the horse? But I think we can work that. I think as we find these groups, David, I think we have to like document them, because we should be then linking them to the lighthouse, right? Which is, the lighthouse is a network of networks. How do you connect this network of networks of folks? And so when I was talking to John from Mere Ventures, you know, entrepreneurs have there's massive amounts of networking groups and things like that. And then they break into their segments of, you know, technology entrepreneurs, fintech entrepreneurs, and they're all doing their networking over here. And then you have the government who does its networking with the same parties all the time. And the two never meet. Because he was telling me about all the different networks he belongs to, and I was telling him about all the things we've been doing. And it was like, we have to connect those. Same thing with like the Black Chamber, Farad, and the list that you and Nigel put together. We have to interconnect all those networks. That's really what the Lighthouse is about. So I think as we gather more information, we should, it's a really good point. We almost should keep a parking lot. Like, okay, that type of group should be in our Lighthouse. That type of group should be in our Lighthouse. Let's not forget them when we build out our network of networks. So I love that idea. Well, even in your line of work, David, I'm sure you have a group of associations that you network with within your industry, within your line of work that might have some ancillary touch points to some of these other networks.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's true. It's certainly the touch points tend to be things, at least for things I work on, are either science and technology or regulation. You see what other industries are impacted similarly to our own. But it's a similar idea. Yes, we do have them. They tend to be a bit idiosyncratic or situational, not necessarily sort of a permanent, but there are coalitions that exist of industry groups that exist for that purpose. So yes, it's just that in this space, you know, that I'm looking at the description, and it says, speak with small innovative companies looking to move into government space. That begs, at least in my mind, and maybe I'm not an expert in this, you know, which comes first? Do they have to get the expertise out there and then spin it into government, or does government help them bootstrap and then they can spin it out into the broader economy? I'm not sure whether one or both happens.
Yeah, and I'm glad you caught that, because, you know, words mean a lot. So it's not just the ones that want to move into the government space or those that the government needs to move into the space to achieve their goals, right?
I mean, yeah, yes. I just don't know how the dynamic typically works, or whether we actually need to, you know, have an effect on the dynamic.
Yeah, I think having an effect on the dynamic is the objective outcome of our recommendation number one. I think that's the whole purpose of it, right? So it's not just to have these, to identify them, but it's to figure out what is the prize. How do you break down the barriers of onboarding them? And not just the winners, that whole market segment. How do you create that demand signal? So I think you're onto something there for sure.
I would say I stumbled onto it.
Stumbled upon a brilliant, but that is the outcome of this, to change that whole dynamic of ability to find these folks, know that you need them, go out and find them, and then know that you need to onboard them, however we figure out how to do it. And one way to start small, low risk, is to run these prize competition challenges. And so our goal is to help curate that pipeline that could be most effective to get a jump start here, I think, is where we are. So that's great. You know, the outcome of the maturity model is more of a rising seas kind of recommendation. How do you just get the standard language, the standard requirements, the standard resources available so that everybody can at least be equipped to engage in the federal marketplace and understand and be capable of achieving the climate and sustainability goals? That's the outcome there. So, and then the Lighthouse is really about connecting. So that's good. Let me see how we're doing on time. 4 o'clock.
Kristen.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I just wanted to take a pause, just procedurally, and just announce that if there are any public comments, that maybe we could take them at this time. I don't really see any members from the public online, but I still wanted to put that out there as procedural.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Okay. I would just reconvene.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So for some actions for today, just gonna kind of memorial these. One, I will get the calendar organized, so we're all working off the same sheet of music, and I will send that to everybody in an email, so you have it and you can print it out. You don't have to go to the Google Drive to get that. Okay, I'm going to follow up on the couple of speakers that I have teed up. Right. And KS and Farad are going to finalize the working groups with a poll from Stephanie. Yeah.
Yes. And then we'll meet next week to send out the list that we got from the results so people know what team they're on, what working group or what team they're on next week.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm going to ask everyone to think about who else can we talk to that can help us advance our cause. We all have pretty broad networks. Okay. Rod, you've got the panel. You can bring that up with your group if you guys want to form a panel. Mamie, you're gonna think about if you have a connection for us.
Yes.
Okay.
The SBA office, Small Business Office, and I know it's a person on the committee, not this committee, not this one, the group as a whole. So via the NAICS codes that GSA tracks, as well as the NAICS codes under SBA, they can probably narrow down based on anything under environmental sustainability and recent entrants in the system. That may shed some light for us. For the various certifications, like the GSA schedule, those coming on the schedule in the last, year or so. Same thing with the Small Business Office. Those would be possibly, some of those individuals probably could share some interest if we could reach out to them.
So they could get us some company names. Am I following?
Yeah, they could give us some company names, and they could narrow down if they're actually in the sustainability business or climate control. I mean, all of that, all the above, environmental aspect.
Okay.
And Kristen, I think she's talking about Mr. Doss, Mr. Antonio Doss. And
yes,
maybe
yes.
if you could kind of formulate a statement for me, maybe we can send that to him. And maybe he could assist us with that. And if he probably cannot provide the answer, maybe there's someone in his office that could probably help.
Yeah, I'm assuming he would delegate it down to somebody that we could reach out to. Okay, I will do that.
Great. Thank you. That's helpful. Okay, so I'm just going to put Mimi and Stephanie. So I can't type. I think you need to make that a requirement going forward, Stephanie, for any subcommittee chairs or co-chairs. The typing is required. Daryl, you're going to put together your lessons learned, your experiences into key bullet points for us, and then reach out. Your executive director's name, would you mind providing it?
Rose Parker.
Oh, Rose. Okay, yeah, I've seen emails from Rose. Yeah, okay. You're going to speak to her and then connect her with Farad.
I'm sorry. No, the executive director of AEC Unites. That's Tia Perry. I'm sorry. I'll connect you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perry.
Yes.
Thanks. Okay.
You said P, right?
Yeah, P.
Okay.
And then what I can do is we'll create a working document on our drive, this parking lot for the lighthouse, so that as we're gathering intelligence on these groups, we'll just have a running list there of folks, so that when we get into that recommendation, we won't have to start from scratch. Okay. All right. Anything else for today? I think we have Katie and Betty are going to join us at 4:30, so we're a little early here.
Totally off subject, Kristen, I just wanted to add a little admin statement. For any of you, and there are a few who have admin assistants, please know that your admin assistants can attend meetings on your behalf. They cannot provide any comments, but they can take notes on your behalf if you're unable to attend any meetings. And we just wanted to put that out there.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, thanks for flagging that, Stephanie. That's helpful.
So let me ask the group here. I know it's a small group, but what else can we do to make your participation easier? And what I mean by that is I completely understand how pressed everybody is for time. Like I had fully intended to have the agenda done last week, and then, you know, it was quarter of the meeting and we're working hard to get it finalized. So, and some people like email, some people, you know, what would help us? Any suggestions on what we can do differently or we can add to what we're doing to make it easier for folks?
Not everybody at once, just one.
Less meeting.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is Kimberly here. I mean, I think for me, it's helpful, like when you send out the kind of notes in advance and then any kind of highlight any action items that you want us to make sure get done by a certain time. I mean, that always personally triggers me. If I see an email from you or Farad, then I'm like, okay, I need to look at this. And if there's a ticker that I need to have something responded to by X date, then I try to focus in on that and get the response in by that. The other thing, and I think you mentioned this, Kristen, just having the link to the Google Drive in the email too is always helpful. I always have a hard time finding it. So whenever you guys can kind of link that in, it's always really helpful to me, because then I just click right on it and I try to go in and do whatever needs to be done. So
definitely. I know sometimes, I don't know if you guys experience this, like, but sometimes when you click on it, you know, because it's in the GSA account, like it doesn't say you have access. So I don't know if it's because you have to log into both at the same time. So I know, or I don't know if that's when I'm on my phone, you know, so it just, I will keep the links. And then sometimes if there's something important, I just drop it in as a PDF and attach it to the email as well. Because I know some people find that easier. I think, you know, for us over these next several weeks, one of the things I'd like us to try and do is stay focused on kind of bringing these recommendations to either finality or a further step of maturity, so that we, you know, at some point, I don't know about all you, but and I'll just share with you my fear. I don't want to like spend 2 years going back and forth, like with GSA on 2 recommendations. I think there's a lot of work to be done. And I think you know, if we can refine our recommendations to a point where they take it, you know, these two recommendations, they said they're interested in, they've asked us to refine them a little bit. So if we can do that and get that bandwidth. So I would just say it's hard, you know, when we're bringing in speakers and we have a lot of people on the subcommittee. I think capturing all the information is important, and then what's relevant for advancing these two recommendations to the next step. And if we can just stay mindful of that and kind of disciplined around it, I think that would be helpful. But that's just me speaking. That's kind of my mindset looking at these two things, because I'd really like to get into this lighthouse recommendation. Everybody's super pumped about it, but right now we don't have the time and the bandwidth to get in there.
So what does a refined recommendation look like? I mean, does it give examples? Does it give a, you know, way to implement the suggestion, or yeah, do we know?
From what I've heard from GSA, you know, we've had several calls, you know, on this innovative new entrance. I think refined is researching the mechanisms that are already available, which we have 3 that we're looking at: challenge.gov, Fastline. And then I think it's really creating this pipeline of, I don't know, 5 challenges they could run. And I'm kind of envisioning like a spreadsheet, Daryl, that says, you know, one challenge could be X and it's geared towards finding Y type companies. And the prize should be geared around onboarding, you know, what is the output and what is the expected outcome. And if GSA had that list, you know, then they could take that list and begin. So that's what I think. That's what I'm seeing for innovative, for number 1. For number 2, I think and Stephanie, I know you've been involved in number 2. For number 2, I think it's 2 things. One, it's one more step forward on what the maturity model might look like. I think there's fuzziness around that. And then 2 is how would sponsor that. Those are the 2 elements of, I think, the recommendation that need refinement based on the feedback. Stephanie, what are your thoughts? Because I know you and I were kind of heavily embedded in this one.
Yeah, so I think with the maturity model, it's basically about trying to get the framework together. Get the framework using existing models that are already in place instead of trying to make your own. So you have capability models, you have agility models, you have various models. Going out there and trying to piece those models together in order to find something that would give a good layout and a process for a GSA to use in order to bring in those, or what is it, Kristen, bring in those industry partners so that they can get those contracts that are coming. What do you need to do? Step 1, where do you need to be? What do you need to have certification in? Where can you find this in GSA? Is there a level of ISO certification needed? Things of that nature. Pretty much mapping out what is needed in order to be included in the and correct me, Kristen, if I'm going in the wrong direction.
No, and I think
in the process.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, spot on. And I think we have to be clear from the feedback we've gotten. It made me realize we need to be really, really clear about this would be an industry facing set of tools and expectations around driving sustainability and climate risk mitigation into federal acquisitions. That's really what it focuses on. So if you envision this new FAR rule coming out and getting finalized, and all of a sudden, let's just say, for example, in order to do business with the government, you have to be able to define scope 3 gases, carbon. What is that? You know, how do you find out information about what it is besides just hiring a contractor, right? And what level do you need to be at? What's the right terminology language? And then how do you move up in that maturity scale? How do you go from being compliant to being kind of engaged to leader? Like, how do you be a leader in government? So that's, I think we just need to take it to the next level on those 2 things. So as you can tell, this is why we need to refine it. I think.
So, for example, if you're a new entrant trying to do work with the federal government, the amount of paperwork that goes into a proposal and all the dotting of the I's and crossing all the T's is very cumbersome, and you need to have a proposal writer that understands the federal government. I guess my question would be, would we put in something that if you want new entrants, maybe you could look at refining the proposal process or requirement process? I mean, is that what you're saying is one? Because I guess what I would say, the big companies that are already doing the work, already working with the federal government, they always have a leg up because they know how to do the proposals. They've done them over and over again. They have a team of people that are doing them. If there's any compliance that's required, they have all that with compliance. You know what I mean? They're already working there. The biggest barrier for a new entrant is to really be able to somehow, the playing field has to be leveled for new people to come in. And that's, forget diversity, just someone new to come in, getting graded with someone who's been there for 100 years. There's just no comparison.
Yeah, I think the maturity model would focus more on, this is what you need to know and be able to do, and this is how here's resources and tools to do it. Around climate and sustainability. I'm not seeing it as that broad proposal writing, but now some of the prizes of this innovative new entrant, Daryl, like if we were to recommend GSA run these types of challenges through these types of channels, I can see the subcommittee still being involved with that, because there's a learning coming out of that might inform the government on how to change some of those on-ramping mechanisms to help. You know, when you bring in, and I see some of that there.
So what you're saying then is that we're really trying to come up with something to help the entrants, not to help the government. I mean, in the end, if the entrants can get to certain levels or whatever, we're helping them. I mean, helping the government, but we're not trying to help mold the government to how they can get new entrants. We're trying to mold entrants so that they can work for the government.
Both. I think it's both.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's both. I mean, yeah. I think what we could do is if you build kind of the target new entrant model, right, then that'll probably identify, well, there needs to be some type of tools or templates that they could rely on if they don't have a proposal writer, right? Here's a good starting point that gives them what they need to lower the barrier to get in. And so that helps the entrance. And then on the other side, hopefully it would also identify for the federal agency to see these out of the 10 things that are required in the proposal, these 2 things are real barriers to new entrants getting in. So how do they address that in their overall process? Is there a way to lower that barrier overall for all entrants in some way, shape, or form? Because they'll see that these are the clear barriers, and even with the tools that are provided and the examples that are provided, these are still clear barriers that are limiting new entrants to get into the programs.
Okay.
Yeah, I see a lot of learnings. If we can create this pipeline and GSA moves on that pipeline of several challenges where we're not just doing it to get a winner, we're also doing it to send a signal and to gather more information, right? To bring these folks together and say, now, so say you have 10 entrants in this, now you got 10 companies you can talk to of, you know, what are those barriers? How do we, right? I think that's got to be part of the desired outcome of running these challenges, not just to have a winner and onboard that one winner into the government. Right? It's to figure out, right, who are these people? Where are these people? How do we bust down those barriers?
So it sounds like though we want to hear too from GSA, like why do we have these barriers? Once we write down the challenges, like maybe they can explain why we have that, and if it's something that can be altered in any kind of way.
Definitely.
And I don't know who that is in GSA, but maybe you all know.
I think we can find that out. I think, you know, that's part of, as we go forward with this, you know, and we make these recommendations or updates, this is what we do have an opportunity to communicate with and document. These are barriers that we identified through talking with XYZ people and in running these challenges down the road. And so that could be a second set of recommendations that this subcommittee comes up with, is here are some mechanisms to reduce those barriers for GSA to consider, versus just saying reduce the barrier, right? That could turn into a second set of recommendations easily, I think. Anyone else kind of see that coming? Yeah.
Real quick, Kristen, I just have another comment, because as I look at all three of the recommendations, which are great recommendations, I don't know, I think in a maturity model sort of framework, I just see them all, like David said, it could all be in one frame, really. And pulling the string a little bit on the lighthouse, was just wondering, with all the associations that are out there, how come just reaching out to the associations, finding a point person at the associations, and GSA building its own coalition, starting there to help with your lighthouse?
So, yeah, I think that's where we're going to go, is we're going to start with like a manual listing, and then we're going to figure out how to make that a living digital exchange. Definitely. It's going to start with a list of organizations to consider, maybe in different segments, right? And how do you connect them all? David.
Yeah, I'm going to jump on that one, because I think trade associations have a challenge with that. So for our own association, I would say that our members represent the vast majority of materials that get recycled. But when you kind of look at it on a participant level, you know, we are, although a majority of our members are considered smaller, medium-sized enterprises, there are many that we don't have as members. So there's a part that they kind of, the trade associations can be perceived as being expensive, and perhaps the value proposition isn't as well articulated as we would like it to be. So certainly it's useful to have associations in the network, but there's kind of a threshold below which there are entities that we don't reach, or at least that our networks don't reach. So there's kind of a cutoff, perhaps. I mean, it may be different for every industry association that tend to have fewer members below a certain, say, level of gross revenue, or however you want to articulate it.
Yeah, and some of them fight for membership, right? So I think when we build the lighthouse out, we acknowledge that, to say that's why connecting the different groups is important, so that when GSA puts out a message, it goes and everybody gets it. And if somebody wants to get to GSA, they can manage their way through these channels. So I think that's what I kind of learned, was also a lot of these groups also have different objectives, which is good. So for example, like someone like ACT-IAC may be working there. They actually have a climate committee, right? And so they have this group working on stuff, but they're not necessarily like reaching out to other networking groups to say, hey, we're working on this with climate. Do you want to work with us, right? That doesn't organically happen. Or do we want to reach out to some small business groups that are working on climate and help them? So can the lighthouse kind of, can it foster that sense of community, you know, with some rigidity in the connections, I guess is how I'm looking. Somebody else had their hand up, I think.
Can I reflect on that if no one has a hand up, because I can't see everybody, is I think some of that's happening in the marketplace right now. I think there are more and more organizations that are looking at their climate impact, and maybe they're saying, oh gosh, we need to position ourselves better to be a viable, candidate for business. So I think maybe the timing of what we're doing is actually pretty good with what's happening in the private sector to some degree already. I just don't know how to strengthen that.
I agree. I think organizations are if I can kind of paraphrase what I think here, I agree with you. I think organizations are beginning to realize this is bigger than our organization. And if we can work together, we'll get more done. And a perfect example is, so for the ACT-I Act Climate Subcommittee, they're having a hard time getting going. And so they asked if, I could come and talk to them about what the FAC is doing. So I think people are starting to realize, like, we're all in this together. Can we join forces? Stephanie, to your point, we have a list started. I'm going to go back in and find that list and create that parking lot so that we're building the lighthouse as we go here. I think that's one thing I hear loud and clear.
Yeah, and it's not to put anyone on the spot. I'm just sitting thinking, of the talent that we have on the committee. You have the Black Chamber of Commerce, you have Dr. Wagger, you have Dr. Wazwai, you can start, right? And then once these individuals are put together in their own association, our own coalition, right? GSA can probably start to establish some sort of annual event or quarterly meeting or something like this with these individuals to get them discussing about the topics that they want to know for those periods and times. But reaching out like we did here recently, we have, was it the Environmental Working Group that's going to speak tomorrow for policy and practice? Reaching out to Mr. Reeder to speak. We already have a point of contact, and I'm sure that GSA is involved with others because we have an ombudsman who deals with industry. But building a coalition around sustainability, or that lighthouse around sustainability and climate, by just giving them the instruction roadmap or process for how to do that. And I think we already have a great start just right here, to be honest.
I don't disagree. It's just kind of getting organized and getting traction. Okay. I'm gonna just fix it. Skylar, I just sent you a note. Did we send the invite to Katie and Betty?
Yes, I did send it to them.
Okay, thank you. They said they'd be joining at 4:30. So where are we with time? We got a couple minutes. So if people want to take a mental break for 2 minutes, and then we've got Katie Newhouse and Betty Cremens from the Council on Environmental Quality joining us at 4:30 for some discussion.
And Mamie did have to drop.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna check my email and make sure they're not having any.
Would you like to have everyone just take a quick pause? They can go off camera, get a drink of water, and then come back in about 4:33.
Okay, 4:33 sounds good. Thanks.
All right.
Kristen, we have Katie and Betty here.
Excellent. Hello, ladies. Good afternoon. We just took a quick bio break. We've been on since 3, so we should have everybody back in less than 60 seconds. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Kristen, are you able to hear me?
I can hear you, Katie. Good afternoon.
Okay. Hello. Thanks
I'm
for
going to
having
stop
us.
sharing my screen. I have just a working document up there. So I think we are coming back. We just took a quick bio break. So let me see. Yep. I think Stephanie, you think we're good to get started?
I think we're good to get started. I think everybody will be right back. If not, I'm sure they can hear us. Okay, great. Thanks. Okay, so welcome, Katie and Betty, this is the Industry Partnership Subcommittee of the FAC. And I know we spoke the other day with Farad and both of you, and that was super informative. So what you have here is the rest of the Industry Partnership Subcommittee, or some of them. And what we've been talking about today is how to refine our 2 recommendations on the innovative new entrants and the climate and acquisition maturity model. So we thought it would be great if you could share a little bit about what you are focused on at CEQ and some of your insights. I appreciate the feedback you gave via the spreadsheet and some of your insights on our recommendations on where you think the subcommittee can further go with these. That makes sense. So why don't we kind of start with your focus? We'll get grounded in that, and then we can dive into each of these recommendations for a few minutes.
Sure. I can kick us off. I'm Katie Newhouse, and I'm part of the Office of the Chief Sustainability Officer within CEQ. And our team is tasked with implementing EO 14057, which also is represented in the Federal Sustainability Plan. We have about 8 different pillars that all of us are focused on, with Betty and I co-leading our net zero emissions procurement pillar. And within that pillar, we are thinking about what the government buys, who the government buys from, and how the government buys. So kind of products and services, company supplier level stuff, and then contract level opportunities as well. So that's a brief overview. Betty, I'll turn it over to you for your introduction.
Yeah, wonderful to be with you. Thank you for all that you're doing to help inform and guide and recommend and support all of our work. Betty Cremens, co-lead with Katie Newhouse on this very ambitious work stream of moving our $630 billion a year of annual spend towards net zero emissions by 2050. Obviously in strong partnership with all of the agencies across the government, thinking about procurement, including but not limited to GSA. And yeah, in addition to the work that Katie mentioned, we make sure that everything we do is underpinned by data. So a lot of work across our greenhouse gas accounting, as well as other metrics and accountability. We do a lot of work benchmarking against the corporate sector and other national governments and subnational governments who are also thinking about the power of green public procurement, finding best practices that will work in a government context and those that we can encourage our suppliers to take on as well. And then really making sure we're finding ways to better communicate and better train our workforce. So your recommendations are very much in line with a lot of the work that Katie and I are doing and how we think about this work. So excited to hear about it.
Great. Great. Well, let's start with the first recommendation that we're kind of focused on, which was around expanding the supplier base, with innovative new entrants who can help with in the areas of climate, risk mitigation, sustainability. And some of the feedback we got early on was it's hard for GSA to go out and know where these folks are, like to even begin engagement and outreach. And so maybe in some of your work, how do you expand your parameters to go out and find the folks we don't know about that can really help us with our cause, in whether it's procuring, greener products, whether it's disruptive technologies out there that we don't even know about that can help with driving the government's goals and things like that. Do you have any insights around how you expand your viewpoint?
I would say that like in our role, we're not buying things directly. So I think there's less of a connection in terms of our activities as CQ. But I think when I think about the topic, what I know about is GSA's Green Proving Ground and then DOD's program, which is a 4-letter acronym that Betty may know. What is it called? Nothing. It's not quite as snazzy as the Green Proving Ground. And so I guess how I think of it is that they try to focus on a problem or like an area where they think that there's opportunity, like bio-based lubricants, and then they thought that there was an opportunity for bio-based, and then the DoD ended up testing out some innovative solutions in that space versus going from the direction Kristen, you kind of started, which is like find the company and then figure out how to fit them in. So, and I think that the Green Proving Ground is similar. They lay out where they want to go, and then they kind of call for industry to submit their solutions for evaluation. Okay. Betty, any thoughts from your side?
Yeah, I think the area of sustainability and greenhouse gases and all the associated environmental impacts that we're considering are ripe for innovation. I think a lot of innovation is already occurring in the private sector, and the sort of the rulemaking and the regulations and the work we're doing is helping to enable the government to seek those innovations from the private sector and integrate them into our supply chains where relevant. And I think there are a lot of other opportunities for us to shift maybe how we're contracting, how we're doing acquisition planning, how we're looking to the market to better even inspire those innovations, especially for systems that are being designed specifically for government. So I think there's a lot of mechanisms and tools that we can pull to sort of enable us to inspire innovations into the market, as well as be on the leading edge of purchasing them. That then enables the market to expand for everybody else as well.
And maybe Betty, to that point, one of the things that we were talking about earlier is like how to get the feedback in to help agencies maybe modify their processes to reduce barriers to get acquisition. And so you mentioned like you guys sometimes think about modifying your acquisition process. Like how do you get information that directs you to say, hey, we need to probably make a change in this area?
I mean, I think it's going to, to Katie's point, we don't do the procurement, we work across procurement. So I think it's going to completely depend on the contract. I think sometimes the way our current contract is written, it limits our ability to actually procure innovative things because it's based on maybe it's based on requirements, not performance specifications, for example, or it's locked in on a sticker price, not a total cost of ownership model. So I think there's a lot of ways we can identify the current limitations in our contracts and in our procurement process that don't allow us to buy the latest and greatest from the market. And then I think in other areas, we can be on the leading edge of bringing those specifications out or making those considerations. And sometimes all you have to do is ask for this stuff and just include it as a consideration, even if it's not baked into the contract itself. And so we're rewarded or incentivized. And so I think there's both the current limitations that we can find as well as the new innovations that we can inspire. And it kind of depends very differently if you're thinking about IT or food or vehicles or buildings, et cetera.
If I may just jump on a follow-up question to that, is it your perception or your understanding that those kinds of changes can be done at the policy level where it doesn't require some kind of rulemaking process? I mean, how quickly can changes be made? That's kind of one thing we probably want to consider too.
So as Katie mentioned, we're working to implement Executive Order 14057 around federal sustainability, which lays out quite a few phrases recommending changes that we make to procurement regulations. So in some cases, there are changes that need to be made. And as you know, that's a long, thorough process in government. But we're also finding all of these incredible sort of pilots in a government sense, which we can then turn into finders that can be done within existing regulations with just innovation in the procurement process. So I think there, you know, we don't need to wait for regulations to come into play. There's a lot we can do within our current systems that are taking us very far. But I think the regulations are going to be a critical piece of the puzzle as we sort of bring everybody else along.
Okay, thank you.
So one of the outputs we envision under this first recommendation is, I think we've been given 3 mechanisms, and Katie, you just mentioned a few more. So, you know, there's mechanisms already out there kind of designed to put the call out and bring folks in. So part of our goal is to kind of refine 2 or 3 of those mechanisms that we would recommend GSA to kind of take advantage of. And then what types of challenges, maybe creating like a pipeline of challenges they could run for different outcomes. But do you have any suggestions? Like, it sounds like Betty's like shaking her head. Like, who do we talk to say what types of challenges would be most powerful, or should we be kind of considering? Like, is it to find, you know, everything's so broad and we're coming at it from such diverse perspectives. We don't have kind of like one core mandate, you know, working in a certain agency of the government.
We didn't talk much about your challenges recommendation last time we met. So could you give us a little more sense, like a challenge? I'm guessing it's like an industry challenge, like come and give your solutions on this challenge. Is that kind of what, and under the only detail you have?
Yeah. And under our role mandate, which is, you know, our recommendation is focused on expanding and diversifying the supplier pool, but this recommendation is very focused on how does the government find innovative new entrants that can support their buying goals when it comes to sustainability and climate risk mitigation. So it could be a replacement product for something. We've had a lot of discussions about, you know, electric vehicles are great, but what are the unintended consequences out there? How do they get recycled? You know, their full life cycle of carbon footprint could be anything. So I guess what we're trying to figure out is how do we go from anything into like, here's a couple of buckets we might want to focus on. And who do we talk to figure out what those buckets might be? From a GSA perspective, when you think about it, they buy so much. I love your example of the military, like they use lubricants for many, many, many things. So if they could attack that problem, we're kind of having a hard time narrowing the scope.
Yes. Okay. I'm like, I have a couple ideas, but I'm like, are these people gonna like be like, why'd you give them my name? So a couple, I'm just gonna go for it because these people are very knowledgeable. Jeremy Alcorn is the Green Proving Ground person I would point you to. And then Dave Osiello is the person on the DoD side. And we can also send the link. There was an MO, which is kind of a cool connection point, which you may already be aware of, is there was a memorandum of understanding signed. You already know about this, between DoD and GSA.
Yeah, on the STED, I think it's like the STED.
Yeah, so the STED is the program that the DoD program is talking about. And then they partnered with Federal Acquisition Service and identified an opportunity to kind of accelerate getting those products available for purchase. Yeah. So I know in the press release, there was someone from FAC mentioned, but in terms of like where to focus in terms of the categorization, I know that the Green Proving Ground recently released another press release with like 6 or 8 categories of items. So I think you could probably learn from Jeremy, like how did they come up with those 6 to 8 and
good. That's perfect.
What type of process you all could run to maybe develop some additional ideas? Okay,
that's great. Thank you.
I might answer the question in the inverse, because I think a lot about industrial decarbonization and industrial materials and the previously called hard to abate sectors. which are now increasingly quick to abate because we're making massive investments in US manufacturing. And in many of those categories, the federal government is a major buyer or the largest buyer of those materials. So I think about things like concrete and steel, where we're increasingly adding specifications in. And I think our colleagues at DOE are thinking a lot about the cleaner new materials. So not just a decarbonized concrete, but a complete replacement for concrete, for example, or mix-ins that will completely change it. There's work going on across DOE, DOD, NIST, Federal Highways Administration, many other federal agencies on these cleaner new materials. And then they sort of hit that proverbial valley of death where the federal government could be the innovative procurer of it, which not only includes contracting for it, but also taking some of the risk and maybe some of the cost burden of the first mover and, on the procurement. And so I think our colleagues across government who are working on the cleaner new materials think a lot about how to get demand signals to push on them, but it doesn't always translate into the federal procurement mechanisms because there's quite a lot of aversion to risk on both procurement and engineering services. And I think GSA brings both of those and a really strong opportunity all across the country to start to innovate these. So Katie mentioned the Green Proving Ground. For the very first time, there is a cement company on there. I don't know how they were selected or why that won or how that brought itself into that mix, but I think there's a lot of opportunity to expand the federal government's ability to procure those cleaner materials based on where DOE and others are making the investments and sort of validating those as good products. And I think the labs are also really critical to making sure that the materials perform not just on environmental, but on other engineering, structural performance specifications.
Oh, yeah.
I would call out one other example that might not be the right example, but is good to look at. So DOE just put out I think it's $100 million grant program for UP grants, for carbon utilization procurement grants. They're not for federal government, they're for state and local agencies to procure more products that contain captured carbon. And that could be a variety of products from cement to methanol to a whole list of other products. But that's an opportunity that DOE is trying to incentivize procurement of really, really clean new materials that actually contain captured carbon into state level procurement. And there could be potential parallels for federal government as well, really thinking about not just shifting a product, but completely changing its makeup using captured carbon.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. I'm taking a lot of notes here, so that's good. I would like to switch gears I'm just making sure there's no other hands up and talk a little bit about the maturity model. I think you had some input on that recommendation. One of the things we're kind of struggling with is scope. Like, you say maturity model in government acquisition. So really around, GSA has goals and objectives to bring more consideration of sustainability and climate risk mitigation into federal acquisitions. That's kind of why this is the first problem we've been faced with. So as we think about this maturity model in that area, one of the things we learned is there's a lot of work going on across government on developing capability like around this area. So any thoughts on, I think we talked a little bit before about partnering with key agencies like EPA, like who could help kind of figure out where the boundaries of scope responsibility lie? And I'm probably not articulating this clearly, but who else should we be partnering with, and how do we help? From your perspective, you kind of have a big overview perspective. How can we create something that has a defined enough focus that it can actually make a difference, right? That people can adhere to it and kind of build their capability. So any thoughts around that from a maturity model perspective?
I have jet airplanes flying right outside my window, so it's very loud all of a sudden. So I'm gonna let, if Betty's okay, go ahead first on this one.
Yeah, I'm sorry, maybe I'm not understanding the question and sort of whose maturity we're trying to influence or map or consider. And
yeah, this would be industry facing. And so a lot of the feedback we got was, I work for a big company, and we have a lot of folks focused on compliance and government contracting when it comes to some of these new requirements. But that's not true across mid-sized businesses, small businesses, new businesses trying to get in. So the recommendation for this maturity model is around climate and sustainability in acquisition. So how do you go from not even knowing what you're talking about to being able to comply, being able to engage, and then, and also set some motivation for companies to lead, right? Get out in front and help lead and pull the supplier base forward. That's kind of the concept of the maturity model.
And would it be like the procurement or the contract lead on the industry side that would be the customer?
Well, I think in a small business, it's probably the owner, right? Because they may not have that contract lead. And I know some of these subcommittee members can really speak to that. But yeah, so for example, the example we used was all the big companies we talked to said, well, it's really easy to calculate your greenhouse gas. And then all the small companies we talked to said, I don't even know where to begin to calculate my greenhouse gas. So there's a divide there. And so we thought the maturity model could be used to unify language, terminology, definitions, what is, and then the resources and steps you can take to comply with these requirements.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that like what we chatted about last time and something that resonated based on what you were just saying is to think about the procurement level, acquisition level, contract level concepts that are needed. And GSA has started to do this on the SF tool. They have like whole building, life cycle assessment, resources and tools. And so it would be kind of what does the industry need to understand in order to like meet GSA where they're at on those types of like contract level, project level, climate and sustainability efforts. So there's that piece that's like more on the greenhouse gas accounting on the project level. And then there's also work that GSA has been doing on climate risk planning on the contract level. So starting to require suppliers to develop a climate risk plan. Mm-hmm. And those are for, I think the GSA policy currently is for contracts over $100 million. So pretty big contracts, but that would be another area that suppliers will need to be ready to respond to.
I think it's interesting that in your questioning and your premise, you touched on sort of this, the competing factors between compliance and innovation, because I think that's where we're constantly trying to strike a balance, right? And so with procurement, you have to set compliance requirements, which require a certain vernacular, as you're mentioning, certain understanding of terminology and accounting and standards that are sort of old hat to some companies in the past decade or so, but completely new to others. And so a lot of it is sort of like bringing up the baseline of understanding of these concepts, which sometimes requires a compliance mentality that you must learn this stuff, right? You must eat your vegetables, like you have to do it, but then you start to realize like it's actually good for you and they're actually tasty and healthy and they make you feel better. And so it's how you then turn that shift from a compliance to a innovation mentality, where the company realizes that by managing their greenhouse gas emissions, they actually might find cost savings, find risks that they didn't know about, begin to actually manage those risks, build new revenue models, build new products, find new customers and contracts with the federal government and others. And so I think in your maturity model, sort of taking it from a compliance to an innovation lens is going to be really critical, because I think it's really easy to just talk about this as like cool new ideas. And it's really easy to talk about it as you must do this to enable you to compete. But I think the bridge between those is the space that you're uniquely qualified to build that bridge.
That's good. That's good. And what about from the group here? Any other, you guys have any? That was really good. You both were able to articulate what I've been trying to articulate for 3 months in 2 sentences. So that was pretty good. Excellent.
I've been working on it for 15 years, but
amen. I love it. I love it. Yeah.
There's a reason why all those major companies are able to actually say, oh yeah, we know how to do this. They learned one day, they started somewhere as well. So, we're all somewhere along a maturity model, as is the federal government, right? We're still learning a lot of the vernacular, and a lot of our procurement folks, to your question, are still learning what greenhouse gases are, where they relate to cost savings, risk management, all these different terms. I think there's a lot of learning that has to go on in a maturity model for our procurement executives as well, and understanding like what is a compliance and what is an innovation opportunity within the context of their category.
Absolutely. And so there is another subcommittee that's focused on the acquisition workforce, but we do envision that this model could mirror. There could be elements of the model that mirror over into the government procurement side, right? The terminology won't be different. Actually, and you could say across all of government and all the federal supplier base. So you can envision where, you know, some of the work EPA is doing, some of the GSA's work is going to be focused on procurement. EPA is looking at more kind of the products and the science, and so, but the terminology, some of the baseline foundational terminology is the same. So if you can envision where these models might be able to link, could be helpful. Even some of the work you all are doing at CEQ, right? Some of that foundational that we need everybody to understand is the same. But it's not as, it's just, and I think back to cybersecurity when that all really started ramping up, was there was a few that really understood it and knew the terminology, and there was a vast majority who didn't. And how can you quickly bring them up to speed? So that's what we're trying to accomplish. David.
Yeah, that's great. Kind of at the opposite end of the spectrum from a scale point of view. I think we're looking at very small details, but from the big picture, and CEQ may be the right place to ask this question, is we're trying to figure out what are the biggest opportunities? Where do we want to focus our efforts? When you've looked at sort of net zero at 2050, do you see particular procurement areas that have the most potential for reductions? And we should try to, you know, tailor our recommendations to take advantage of those sort of high leverage aspects. You don't want to spend all our time on doing things that have a marginal effect because, let's say, those products are actually relatively efficient from a carbon perspective. So I don't know if you have any insight into that.
Yeah,
I think all of our subcommittees are kind of pondering that question.
Yeah, I will. I wish it was that simple. I would say I think it's a multivariable sort of prioritization. So I think greenhouse gas emissions of the sector is like a critical cut of analysis. I think the size of the contracts and the procurement scale for the agency is another one. I think the way that the market is moving, and whether we are the largest player in the market or we're just one of many players in the market, is really critical. And sort of the sequencing of this, and then also how it interacts with our other administrative objectives. So things like Made in America, our work with union, labor, our work on environmental justice and communities, I think are all really critical considerations as we prioritize as well. And then it's not just greenhouse gas emissions, but there's a lot of other environmental factors, water, PFAS, chemicals, et cetera. And then there's also climate risk. So sometimes things are a low emission, but they're really high on a climate risk perspective because they're being built at sea level or they're in a wildfire prone area. And there's both chronic and acute climate risks that occur. So we have to think of sort of chronic sea level rise and then one-off major catastrophic events and continuity of supply chains. And then there's all the suppliers of those companies. So our direct suppliers might not be the biggest emitters, but their suppliers that they depend on, their subcontractors, are really, really critical ones. So I wish it was as simple as like ranking by greenhouse gas emission and then just hitting the oil and gas sector, or, you know, picking the ones with the highest emissions per dollar spend. But I think it's going to be a multivariable approach. And then there's also like when the contracts come up for renewal and how opportunistic we can be. In many cases, we can sort of begin to pilot this on a rolling basis as opposed to always hitting the most impactful ones first.
Those are great points, and certainly carbon. I was thinking scope 1, 2, and 3, and some people might even call 4, but as well as water and other aspects. You know, those are all very true. I just didn't know if even if we have those multiple variables, can we actually learn something that's true, even if we can't pin it all down because, as you say, it's a complex situation.
Yeah, I think that one of the other variables, and Betty said that the share of the market that is the US government's procurement, but like a slight take on that is like I think the level of customization, because like that's where the US government GSA can like send a signal. And I don't know how often GSA, I guess like buildings, maybe construction projects, maybe, but like they don't do as much like I'm thinking NASA, DOT, like that type of like customized products where really the industry is building something for the government. And those seem to be clear opportunities for what we're talking about.
Right. Yeah, this is more like all other, right? Buying all other common items. So interesting. Well, even that discussion, you can envision where some of that maturity model on getting the supplier base to fully understand, the difference between sustainable products and climate risk, and then what are steps that can be done to mitigate climate risk. I think there is an opportunity there for us in this model. So I want to be mindful of time. Let me just see if there's any other questions from the group. I really appreciate both of you jumping on and joining with us today. And we're excited to keep you informed of our progress as we explore, refine, and learn a lot along the way. So
yeah, thank you as well. I want to note, because Katie's probably too humble to mention this, if you haven't seen the news, that the proposed FAR case on sustainable products was launched yesterday. So please spread widely and highly encourage all public comments in through regulations.gov over the public comment period on that rule, because it's a critical piece of this work and really critical to GSA's procurement as well. I mean, it builds upon their existing work. It doesn't revolutionize anything. It just expands and strengthens their existing work on sustainable purchasing of products specifically. But that's obviously one key aspect of this work.
Excellent. Yeah, we
thanks,
talked about
Betty,
that
and thanks everyone for including us today.
Yeah, thank you so much. Very good. We'll let you ladies drop off, and then Stephanie will, I think we're ready to adjourn.
Okay. Well, we'd just like to thank Betty and Katie for today. And thank all of you for attending. And at this moment, we are now adjourned. Next meeting is August, is it the 30th?
It's the 30th?
Yes, the 30th.
30th, 3 to 5.
Okay.